Pasamos entonces al grupo 4, Desempeño de la revista SciELO. Invitamos a la doctora Tania Douglas, profesora y presidente de la investigación en Biomedical Engineering e Innovation en la Universidad de Cape Town. Profesora.
Good afternoon, colleagues. I'd like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to be here. I'm really enjoying myself. The chair of Working Group 4 was Renato Paiva, who is a professor at the Federal University of Lavras and editor-in-chief of 2 SciELO journals. In Working Group 4, we were reminded that SciELO is an outstanding and an extremely valuable resource. The Working Group 4 session was intended to show the value, to show the impact of SciELO through the performance of its journals. The SciELO collections in the various countries do receive some support from their respective governments. And governments, of course, would like to know that their funding has had an impact. They would like to see a return on their investment. Some of the speakers and members of the audience highlighted the purpose of SciELO, as it was articulated 20 years ago. The purpose was to address the problem of invisible science, science being performed in Brazil and subsequently in the other 14 SciELO countries, but not published. SciELO was intended to make such science visible. The first speaker was James Testa, who joined us via a recording. He is the Vice President Emeritus for Editorial Development and Publisher Relations at Clarivate Analytics. His presentation was on international collaboration and top-cited journals. Mr. Testa's focus is the development of relationships with the worldwide publishing community whose works are indexed in the Web of Science. He is involved in the selection of journals for the Web of Science. His view is that SciELO has had a positive effect on scholarly communication, bringing more journals into the international mainstream from the countries that have adopted SciELO. He showed that there has been a healthy supply of papers from the 15 SciELO countries over the period 2007 to 2016, and that there's an increasing trend in the number of papers. In total, the 15 countries produced over 300,000 papers over this period. In terms of international collaboration, it was shown that the top 1% of papers, in terms of citations, had 420 countries of authorship, while the bottom 1% had only 64 countries of co-authorship. This, of course, demonstrates the importance of international collaboration for higher citation counts and for impact. Citation counts are, however, only one indicator of impact. Mr. Testa raised the challenge of assessing the importance and influence of a publication in its country of origin, which is not necessarily reflected in citation metrics. Some of the metrics described by some of the subsequent speakers do begin to address different ways of assessing impact. The next speaker was Kathy Holland, who is the Business Development Manager for Digital Science. Ms. Holland presented on the performance of SciELO journals through the lens of dimensions, which she calls a networked knowledge system. Dimensions is a tool that collects citation data and links this data to other data points for a fuller research picture. Ms. Holland reminded us of the new perspective on impact that has emerged in the world. We are not only interested in academic impact, meaning journal impact factors and citation counts, the traditional metrics, but we're also interested in societal impact, which can be measured by altmetrics. The kinds of indicators that feature in altmetrics include mentions in news reports, social media reach, mentions in blogs, patent citations, and policy citations. These indicators are, of course, relevant at the article rather than at the journal level. Now, what do these metrics mean, and why are the newer metrics important? Broadly, they are considered a real measure of influence in a changing world. They're an indicator to researchers of whether their work is being noticed by the broader public. Ms. Holland presented some data on the SciELO publications. She showed that citation rates are clearly increasing. What is also notable is that patent citations are increasing. Now, what is meant by patent citations? Patent citations mean that SciELO publications are being cited in patent documents. There's also a general upward trend in policy documents citing SciELO publications. As an example of such policy citation, Ms. Holland showed a policy document by the Center for Disease Control on the Zika virus. Now, this shows recognition by a prestigious international institution of a paper on a topic that is highly relevant in Brazil. So, in terms of these two new forms of impact measure, patent citations and policy citations, SciELO is doing very well. Two areas of research for which the number of open access publications in Brazil is increasing substantially are crop and pasture production and plant biology. It was suggested that these two areas are ones to which SciELO should pay attention. The next speaker was Stephanie Faulkner, product manager at the Elsevier Research Metrics Group. She presented the performance of SciELO journals based on site score, on citation index comparisons, and on PlumX metrics. Site score is an alternative impact metric based on Scopus and is calculated slightly differently from the journal impact factor. Based on site score, only one SciELO journal is in the 90th percentile in its category. This is the Revista de Saúde Pública. I gather that in translation, this is the Journal of Public Health. 9 journals are placed in the 75 to 89% percentile. So altogether 10 journals in the first quartile for their categories, and 49 journals are in the second quartile, the 50th to the 74th percentile. Ms. Faulkner also described PlumX, which uses a set of altmetrics indicators, but also including citations. PlumX provides article-level metrics and is available in SciELO. The metrics provided can give journal editors an indication of whether they need to do more promotion on social media, for example. The next speaker was Roberto Arruda, who is a professor at the University of Campinas and an advisor to FAPESP, which is the research funding agency for the state of Sao Paulo. SciELO Brazil started off as a FAPESP project and is funded by FAPESP. Professor Arruda presented the preliminary results of an evaluation by FAPESP of the SciELO journals that it supports. FAPESP would like to know whether their investment in SciELO has paid off. The journals being evaluated are asked to provide information on their editorial development plan. They are evaluated on their editorial board, the significance of the field they represent, the international visibility, and their institutionalization and sustainability. Only 35% of the journals have been evaluated thus far, and 77% of these have been categorized as good or very good. Only 6% of the evaluated journals are considered poor and are cause for concern. These are, of course, preliminary results, but they do show a high percentage of journals considered good or very good. And this is, of course, very encouraging. Some challenges were mentioned that were encountered in the evaluation process. For example, the reviewers were not always unbiased, as many were involved in the journals that they were asked to evaluate. So there were some conflicts of interest. And the quality of the reviews has also been quite variable thus far. But there are some suggestions from the reviewers that will be very useful to the journals. There's also the question of what to do about journals in the poor category. Should their funding be withheld, for example? Or should they be given an opportunity to improve? These are matters that the Evaluation Committee are still considering. The final speaker was Isidro Achillo, and he explained this morning to me how to pronounce his surname, and I apologize if I didn't do it correctly. He's from the Spanish Research Council in Madrid. His talk was about web identity and positioning, with a focus on SciELO Brazil. We heard that journals lose their individual identity in internet search results. They are lost in the SciELO brand. What search engines typically deliver is the reference to SciELO rather than the reference to a specific journal. There's often an absence of journal metadata that would aid their visibility. These gaps are related to the structure of the SciELO platform, which in turn shapes the content for a particular journal. The recommendation is to reorganize the technical structure of the SciELO platform and to pay particular attention to search engine optimization. Another difficulty that was mentioned is the absence of metadata in article PDFs. We heard a presentation this morning on JATS and XML, and these tools might be able to address some of the concerns that have been highlighted with regard to metadata. Now, to summarize the discussion of Working Group 4, we heard not only about the performance of SciELO journals, but we also heard about how to measure performance. The various speakers highlighted that journal editors and managers have a fairly complex world of metrics to navigate, but that these tools can guide journals in their dissemination strategies. The metrics are also useful for funding agencies, which expect researchers to show potential impact in their funding applications beyond scientific merit. The range of metrics that are becoming available makes this task easier. The analyses that were presented on SciELO journals show that SciELO journals are performing well, and that the results suggest that SciELO is indeed making visible the research from the countries that it serves. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, profesora Douglas. Tenemos un rico material que seguramente nos servirá de orientación para el análisis y la planeación de las prioridades en los próximos años en las colecciones de SciELO.